God, we just thank you. We thank you that you wanted us, you called us. I pray for those who are struggling this morning. I ask that they just feel so encouraged that you want them, that you see them, that you're calling them. Father, for those who come here today and feeling dry, we ask that you just give us your living water. For those of us who just want more guidance, more direction, that you'd speak to us. Lord, you'd show us what's next. For those, God, who are leading, who are ministering, we ask just for even greater power, greater vision. We lay ourselves before you. We ask you to speak to us. In Jesus' name. Amen. We're going to do what I think this is probably one of my favourite stories in the whole Old Testament today. I love it. I love this bit so much. It's from 1 Samuel chapter 30. I'm just going to read it to you, and I just encourage you, just sit and listen to it. This is brilliant stuff. We've been looking at David, and David was a shepherd boy who out of nowhere really was chosen by the Lord, and he was given an anointing to become the king. But he's not king yet. He's still not king, many, many years after he's been anointed as king. He's beaten Goliath. He's played his harp. He's now fleeing from the king, Saul, and he's kind of roaming around in the desert and border regions of the land. And a whole ragbag band of people have been attracted to him. So this is David. Now listen to this. I love it. David and his men reached Ziklag on the third day. Now the Amalekites, these are another tribe, had raided the Negev and Ziklag. They had attacked Ziklag and burnt it. And they had taken captive the women and all who were in it, both young and old. They killed none of them, but carried them off as they went on their way. When David and his men came to Ziklag, they found it destroyed by fire, and their wives and sons and daughters taken captive. So David and his men wept aloud until they had no strength left to weep. David's 2 wives had been captured. Two wives. David's 2 wives had been captured. Ahinoam of Jezreel and Abigail, the widow of Nabal of Carmel. David was greatly distressed because the men were talking of stoning him. Each one was bitter in spirit because of his sons and daughters, but not because of their wives, notice. David found strength in the Lord his God. Then David said to Abiathar the priest, the son of Ahimelech, "Bring me the ephod." Abiathar brought it to him, and David inquired of the Lord, "Shall I pursue this raiding party? Will I overtake them?" "Pursue them," he answered. "You will certainly overtake them and succeed in the rescue." David and the 600 men with him came to the Besor ravine, where some stayed behind, for 200 men were too exhausted to cross the ravine. But David and 400 men continued the pursuit. They found an Egyptian in a field and brought him to David. They gave him water to drink and food to eat, part of a cake of pressed figs and 2 cakes of raisins. He ate and was revived, for he had not eaten any food or drunk any water for 3 days and 3 nights. David asked him, "To whom do you belong, and where do you come from?" He said, "I'm an Egyptian, the slave of an Amalekite. My master abandoned me when I became ill 3 days ago. We raided the Negev of the Kerethites and the territory belonging to Judah and the Negev of Caleb. And we burned Ziklag." David asked him, "Can you lead me down to this raiding party?" He answered, "Swear to me before God that you will not kill me, or hand me over to my master, and I will take you down to them." He led David down, and there they were, scattered over the countryside, eating, drinking, and reveling because of the great amount of plunder they had taken from the land of the Philistines and from Judah. David fought them from dusk until the evening of the next day, and none of them got away, except 400 young men who rode off on camels and fled. David recovered everything the Amalekites had taken, including his 2 wives. Nothing was missing, young or old, boy or girl, plunder or anything else they had taken. David brought everything back. He took all the flocks and herds, and his men drove them ahead of other livestock, saying, "This is David's plunder." Then David came to the 200 men who had been too exhausted to follow him and who were left behind at the Besor ravine. They came out to meet David and the people with him. As David and his men approached, he greeted them, but all the evil men and troublemakers among David's followers said, "Because they didn't go with us, we won't share with them the plunder we recovered. However, they can take their wife and children and go." David replied, "No, my brothers, you must not do that with what the Lord has given us. He has protected us and handed to us the forces that came against us. Who will listen to what you say? The share of the men who stayed with the supplies is to be the same as that of him who went down to the battle. All will share alike." David made this a statute and ordinance for Israel from that day to this. Love this stuff. Love it. The first thing we can get from this is you need God. You need God. You see, David in this story illustrates for us Jesus. He illustrates for us the rescue that Jesus was going to perform hundreds of years later. You see, that the story of the Bible, and you may know this, or maybe you don't know this, maybe you're new here, maybe you don't follow Jesus yet, you're just exploring him. And if you are, I just want to say you're so welcome. We want you to be here. We want you to have time to explore at your own speed. There's no pressure. We just want to lay Jesus out in front of you, and you just see him and you think, "Oh, okay, I want to know more." That's our desire, that's our prayer. If that's where you are, then you should know this, that Jesus says that all of us have been taken captive. There's been a raiding party into all of our lives. And something has come and grabbed you and holds you captive. And it kind of rejoices over you, as it were. Now, the Bible uses different words for this. It might call it sin, it might call it the work of the enemy, it might call it the fallenness of this world. But the story is that you are held captive. And you might be here this morning and you might think, "Yes, I feel captive. I feel captive." Well, the good news is this, that Jesus, who was one of your family, who was your brother, as it were, has led a raiding party to rescue you from your captivity. And from morning of the day until it went dark, he fought, not with a sword or a spear, but he fought with his own body on the cross. And he won for you everything back that you were. And it makes such a big deal in the story of how David reclaimed everything that was taken. And Jesus has reclaimed everything that has been plundered from your life. Everything that has been taken from you, he has won back. He has rescued you, not just with, kind of a few bumps and bruises, but he's fully rescued you. That is the story of Jesus. That is what he says to you. That's what he wants to do for you. And I don't know about you, but I still see this happening day in, day out in Croydon, in this church, in my own life. It's a shame she's gone out now, but it was Leslie's birthday on Friday. Leslie's my wife, or I'm her husband. She likes to say I'm her husband. Sure. I only have one anyway, unlike David. And we were just talking about, kind of when we first got to know one another. And it's amazing looking at what Jesus has done, how he set people free. Because when Leslie and I first met, we'd spend time together and we'd have a wonderful time. And then suddenly something would just flick and something would change. And I couldn't work it out. Like, we'd be talking and then I obviously just said something that was wrong. She'd just really retreat. And sort of the softness would disappear and she'd just retreat. What's going on here? I don't understand what this is. And I'd see her do it in other contexts as well. And she would say herself, and if she was here, she would absolutely fully agree, she was held captive by shame. As a teenager, she'd spent a lot of time doing a lot of things her parents didn't want her to do. And foolishly, she'd written about it all in a diary, including all the stuff that she felt about her parents, all the negative things. And then even more foolishly, not only did she write it in her diary, she left her diary out so her parents read it. And somehow this bred in her this shame Like, people react to those kind of things in different ways, don't they? But there was this shame that just stood over her and held captive over her. And then anywhere she was, there'd just be this situation, the trigger would just go off. And it would the shame would be rejoicing over her. I hold you captive. You're not free. And over the years, it's just incredible to me now that I kind of look at Leslie, and she's never ashamed of anything. Like, she's just been completely set free from shame. Like, just the work of Jesus to say that, everything that you've done wrong has been taken by me on the cross. All that was scarlet and dirty has been washed clean. It's now pure as white as snow. This is what Jesus does in our lives if we just walk with him over time. He sets you free. He rescues you. So, you need God. But here's another thing that's a bit surprising. You need leaders. You need leaders. This is what's maybe less... In different parts of the world, we see leadership and authority in different ways. And in this context, in the UK, generally, we see leadership as maybe a negative thing. I don't know how you feel about the idea of you needing leaders. In other people, you'll be thinking, yeah, of course I do. But God shows throughout the whole of the Bible, and this is one great illustration of it, is that people need leaders. The way that God's rescue is administered to your life is through the leaders that you have around you. In a lot of ways. Now listen, I'm not talking about formal leadership, but I'm talking about people who choose to actively do things to minister the goodness of God to you. I'm going to convince you of this. See, what we have in our Western society, in the UK at least, it is a massive inheritance of something called individualism. And individualism basically says this, that you are on your own before the Lord. And you operate in isolation with him. And this is like one of the less good fruits that came out of the Reformation. The Reformation brought so much good thing. And it helped to correct an imbalance, which said that you can't do anything on your own. No, we all stand before the Lord on our own. But it's gone too far. And now we all think, I'm just on my own before God. And God just wants to, I think, highlight to some of us here that it's important, it's actually essential for us to be in the context where we have leadership. We allow people to speak into our lives. We have leadership in us. And just an example, a while ago we got a taxi. I don't often get taxis, but we had to get a taxi to the airport. And I was talking to the taxi driver, and for me, these are like easy chances just to talk about Jesus with somebody I'm never going to see again. So, give it a go. Why not? So, started talking a bit about Jesus. And he was like, oh, yeah, that's brilliant. And then he said something. He's like, we talked about church. Have you ever been? Oh, this is my church, he said. This is my church, the taxi. This taxi's my church. And I thought, I love that, actually. I love that. That's really true. Like, there is an essence of what his taxi is, his church. Because you get to show the love of Jesus to people. But at the same time, it's like, you can just end up acting like a loose cannon. You've got no community around you to support you, or to help you, and to encourage you. There's nobody kind of who sometimes watches over you and says, I suggest, are you quite right there? Or maybe stand alongside you and help you. And trouble with loose cannons is that if you act like a loose cannon, then eventually you have nobody there to refill your ammunition. It works for a while and then you just run dry. And so in the New Testament, you'll see Jesus deliberately invests his primary effort in the people who are going to be the leaders of the church. And then Paul, when he's going all around the Mediterranean, one of his primary focuses, we need to appoint elders. In all these churches, we need to have leaders. And if you think about the guys in this story, the Israelites, where would they have been without David to lead them? Where would they have been? They probably would have all attacked one another and just remained. Everything had been plundered from them. And so I want to make a case to you that last week we talked about loving relationships. this week, I want to say, you want to have leaders in your life. You want to allow people to lead you. So what do you want from these people? Well, there's 5 things in this passage. Firstly, a good leader points to God being the ultimate leader. A good leader points to God being the ultimate leader. You see, David is a great leader, but he always points towards his leadership. He's being led by God. When he's trying to work out what to do, he asks Abiathar and says, let's ask God what to do. And then when they're raiding, he says, this is God's mission. He says to all, this is God's mission. And then when they've got the plunder, he said, this is God's plunder. You see, what you want to look for is people who are led by God. And it's not about themselves. That's what you want from somebody who's a leader, God's kind of leader. Even Jesus did this. Even though he carried within himself the full presence of God. It said in him dwelt. He was the visible image of the invisible God. He was in that way, and yet he still said, I don't do anything. I don't do anything except what the Father tells me to do. And I only speak the words the Father's given me to do. A good leader always points to God being the ultimate leader. I could talk about prayer, but I just want to actually pick up on language. And if you are somebody who leads in any context, I just want to encourage you, think about this. Think about your language. Because it's so easy to slip into, I'm doing this. This is my ministry. This is my position. I'm the leader here. This is my plan. And I think ultimately there's danger there. That maybe just gives you a warning sign. It always worries me when people ask me, like, how is your ministry? Oh, it's Jesus' ministry, and I just help out. I mean, we look to him, it's his thing. He's the leader. And so maybe you're a manager at work, maybe you manage other people. And maybe it's not necessarily appropriate to use the language of Jesus is the true manager. Okay, I understand that. But in your heart, maybe you can find ways to express to the people you're managing that ultimately, this isn't about me. This isn't about me gaining more status. This isn't about me getting what I want. I'm serving. I'm serving you. I'm playing my role to serve. And I myself am a man under authority. John the Baptist, I love it. It says, I only receive the power that's given to me from above. If you have that as your perspective, and you can spot that when you speak. So leaders point to God being the ultimate leader. Good leaders do. God's kind of leaders accept blame. David, it says, was greatly distressed because the men were talking of stoning him. Each was bitter in spirit because of his sons and daughters. So David's had people plundered as well. He's in there amongst all of them. But he is the leader and so everybody looks at him and they're going to kill him. They want to blame him. And let me tell you, you want to find a leader who will accept blame. You won't always turn it back, well, it's your fault. They won't always be like, well, where were you? Or, oh, I'm a victim, and stand there, oh, I'm a victim. No, just accept the blame. If you are leading in any context, if you're teaching, or you're a parent in the family, or you're leading on a sports team, and your team lose, take the blame. Blame it on me. If anything goes wrong in this church, blame me for it. It probably is my fault.
Oh, man.
But leadership is shared. You know, leadership is... I just want to feel a release of leadership. I've heard people say that choosing to lead is like choosing to be ugly. I think that's true. If you choose to lead, you choose to have people point fingers at you and say, and you suck it up. Just suck it up. How do you suck it up? You take it to the Lord. What does David do? They all want to kill him. So he doesn't be like, I was the one who defeated Goliath. Come on. No, he's like, okay, I'm going to take this to the Lord. And this is why if you're going to lead, in any context, if you want to find somebody you're going to entrust leadership over you, character is absolutely crucial. Because if somebody is going to take the blame for the things they do wrong and take the blame for things they aren't going to do wrong, character is absolutely crucial. That's why God's criteria for leadership in the New Testament, it's nearly all about character. It's nearly all about, can they respond well when they're being blamed for things? Do they know the Lord? There's Nelson, I think it was, who was a great naval captain and one of Britain's Navy's greatest leaders. And what they say Nelson did is that every single day, when he went out, he would take the weather readings of the wind and the sun and the tide readings, and then he would chart, this is how this weather and this tide is going to affect what we're doing on the boat today. Every single day. Every single day. It was lovely sunny days, still clear. And everyone's like, why are you doing this? He's like, he did it every single day. And then I think it was the Battle of Trafalgar when there was terrible weather suddenly came in. And every single day, he just learned how to interpret the wind and the waves and the tide patterns. And so when it really counts, he could just do it. Because he'd done it every single day. It just came naturally. And it's like, you choose to invest in yourself. You're a leader. Choose in the good weather, in the fair weather. Invest in your character. Because when the foul weather hits, all that work you've done will bear dividend. On the easy days, seek the Lord. When you're celebrating, honour the Lord. And then when tragedy hits, when crisis hits, you know how to meet the Lord. You can do it quickly. You don't have to go running and, oh God, where are you? Character. Thirdly, they speak hope. You want to find somebody who's going to speak hope into your life. You want to find somebody who's going to speak hope into your life. The fascinating thing about David is that in this passage, he doesn't actually give a big rousing speech. He's not like Henry IV Part 2, once more, all that kind of stuff. It's not a great rousing speech. What he does is he just, probably in front of the whole community, he seeks God and says, what should we do, God? And through Abiathar and through that ephod thing, he goes, yeah, you're gonna get the people back. So it's like, all right, let's go. That's how I see it. You see, you don't have to be a great public speaker to be able to lead other people, to be able to give them hope. Somebody doesn't have to be visually impressive for them to be able to speak hope into your life. They just need to say, look, he said it, so let's go for it. Jesus said he'll forgive you. The Father will wipe you clean. He says he'll always be with you. He says go and make disciples. He'll be with you everywhere. Just let's go. You want somebody who speaks hope to your life. And if you are a leader, one of the primary things you need to be able to do is speak hope to those who are losing hope. To those who feel traumatized and oppressed. Find a way to speak hope. Fourthly, they invite all people to shine. They invite... She's fine. She's fine. It's fine. That's good. You see, this is something that I think is so amazing about Jesus' style of leadership that's manifested through David. It really makes it clear to you that the person who they come across is an Egyptian. Okay, so first of all, have we got any Egyptians here? Oh, well, it would be great. Hopefully we will someday. See, the Egyptians were probably some of the Arabic tribes. Through right back at Abraham, he had two sons. So he had Ishmael, who then was all the Arabic children came from. And he had Isaac, the people who were kind of through the promise, children of the promise. And even in this moment, even before Jesus, way before Jesus, what the passage really clearly shows is that even those who were born of Ishmael can be brought in and play a role in the community of faith. You can't get excluded on ethnic grounds. And what we want, and we've said this recently, what we want to really be is a place where any nation, any person from any cultural background, the invitation is to you to come and play as much active a role as you want to play. There's no exclusion. Just because I'm white doesn't mean you have to be white. Just because I'm English doesn't mean you have to be English. Whoever you are, wherever you're from, there is an invitation from God through Jesus and now through me. I say this to you. I never ever want you to feel excluded because you're culturally or ethnically different from me. In fact, that excites me more than anything. When we see people coming in from different nations, different cultural backgrounds. This is what the kingdom is. This is God's style of leadership. Not only was this guy an Egyptian even. He could have been Ethiopian. It doesn't matter. He also was one of the team who plundered and burnt David's house. He was one of the people who was aggressively attacking David. I love it. Because it's like God showed his love for you, for me, in this. While we were still his enemies, Jesus died for you. While you were like a raiding party on the people of God, I don't care about him. God says this, but I want to do that, so I'm going to do that. I reject your leadership over me, God. I reject whatever it is. You can be somebody who's part of the plundering party to oppose God, to try and steal things from him. And yet he invites you. Hey, do you want to come and play a part? I love it because David, he feeds the guy, spends quite a lot of time talking about how nice the food was he gives him. He feeds him before he even asks him any questions. God's style of leadership is somebody who instinct is towards compassion. Instinct is towards care and nurture. And then even when he says, yeah, I was part of the party, then David says this, could you lead us? ... Could you lead us? See, any person who wants to, if you want to lead like God leads, your question to somebody is, could you lead us? Us? Not could you lead that lot? Not I'm superior, I'm above everyone. No. Could you lead us? You can bring something that's going to help us all move forward. That's the invitation. It's remarkable. Something I love about what God's done in this church is, we've got loads of people who are in positions of leadership here, who have come out of just really, really painful, difficult backgrounds. We've got people who've had marriages that have broken down, who are playing significant parts. And that's because that's the invitation of Jesus. It's no exclusion. It's not like, oh, you're excluded basically. No, it's like, come in. Could you lead us? And so I say to you, if you need to hear it from me, this is the truth. And we honestly mean this. I hope if you've been around, you feel this. There is an invitation for you to bring what you want to bring, to contribute to what God wants us to do as a community. Can you lead us? You can do things that we can't currently do. You can add a flavour, you can bring more than what we currently have. Does that make sense? So leaders point to God being the ultimate leader. They accept the blame. They speak hope. They invite all people to shine. And then they point you to being part of a community. They point you to being part of a community. There's the 200 who have to stay at the Besor Ravine because they're shattered. They're just absolutely wiped out. They're exhausted. And we've all been in that place. Maybe some of you are here and you're like, I'm at Besor Ravine. I can't carry on. I just need some time out. I'm absolutely whacked. I'll just sit and look after the bags. And then there's some of you and you're the fit and the strong. You're going out and you're fighting and you're winning victories and you're doing great things and you're like right on the front line. And the temptation is that those who are on the, winning the victories and on the front line, they turn around, well, they're not doing anything useful. And those of you who are sat on the Besor Ravine because you're exhausted, you kind of look at, and you build up resentment to those who are on the front. Oh, they're just going to claim all the credit. And it just, divisiveness comes. And so as a leader, God's kind of leader, we're a community. We're a people. We're not individuals just getting whatever we can get. It's not about the fit and the strong. It's not a meritocracy in the church. As in, a meritocracy means you get whatever you deserve. It's not. We show compassion, deliberate compassion. We choose to share what we have. Even if we're the ones who've got it all, we choose to share. Because we know that God loves those in Beesall Ravine, and He's bound us tightly to them. We want to be a community of compassion as a church. I've met quite a few people recently who, not in this area, but who said, the thing I didn't like about this church or that church or whatever was I felt like it was like a transaction. If you put this in, then you can get that out. And I'm absolutely confident that's not what the church felt. But somehow this is what had been picked up. And I just want to say it's never that way with Jesus. It's never that way with his church. It should never be. You see, he says, come. The doors are open wide. Come and drink. Come and eat. Come and be with me. I want to come and be with you. I want to live with you. I want to nurture you. I want to feed you. And out of that, of course, then gratitude develops and you begin to do things back to him. But it's never a transaction. It's grace from beginning to end. And so I hope, I'm conscious that some of you at least look to Leslie and I for leadership. And on this one, I'm really grateful for that. Leslie, she is just very naturally very good at showing compassion to people and love and value for them, even when they're spent. And honestly, I'm not. I'm not so good at that. I'm working hard on it. I'm asking the Lord to change me. I want to. And if you felt like that way and I haven't, something crazy's just happened on my, don't know what that was. None of you saw it, and you didn't even notice, so I can just carry on. We've talked about leaders, and there's no sense in that. And some of you will have had leaders in the past, especially within church context, and they've hurt you. And if you've been here very long, I've probably hurt you. And I apologise. I'm genuinely sorry. I don't want to be doing that. But what can happen is that you can develop a cynicism. And you can kind of keep on harking back to this thing that happened. I've met people and they still talk as if like a church split or a problem that some leader put on their life, as if it happened this morning. And then you ask questions and you discover this happened 20 years ago. And it's still like so fresh. Oh, she's back. You look lovely, my darling. I just was saying, it's a shame you weren't here. I was saying how wonderful you are.
Yeah, I bet, yeah.
I've forgotten what I was saying. What was I saying?
20 years ago.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Phil. So, listen, this isn't any claim to say that any human leader is going to be perfect. And certainly this isn't. I'm not. But we choose anyway to trust Jesus when he says you need leaders in your life. We choose anyway to have faith and confidence, say, I will place my confidence in this. That if I actually allow somebody to speak into my life, to have some authority over me, on balance, I will see the goodness of God brought into my life. There'll be moments where they mess it up, where they hurt me and break me. But actually, if I continue to trust, then this will be for my good and for the good of all people. That's enough for me, I think. Andy, do you want to come and do ministry?